Okay, well, everybody, I'm thrilled to introduce to you Jen Kolstad, the Global Design Director for Ford Motor Company. And the timing of your visit with us, Jen, is perfect today. We're talking about the notion of meta design and becoming a design leader and affecting change with the huge diversity of problems that are confronting us, especially at this point in time. So I know you had some very specific things you wanted to share with us and your work and how you're approaching this conundrum of leadership and making change happen. So please take it away.
Okay. Hi, guys. How are you all? So there's just 5 of you, right? Is that correct? Is that what I'm seeing?
And we're also joined by Ariana. Great to have you, Ariana.
Yeah, I thought Ariana had this like amazing smile, and then I realized she was fixed in time and it's her photograph. So I was a little bit tripped up by that for a second. But I mean, you can't tell on these Zoom calls anymore, right? They're really strange. Okay, but on my end, I've got my daughter's home now from school, so you might hear some noises in the background, including hi and thank you. Yeah, hi. You might hear we've got the election, spewing in the background, so you might be hearing CNN or whatever. So that's happening also. Okay, and I am just like restraining myself to talk about Florida because that's where y'all are. But okay.
Never a dull moment for sure.
I'm holding back. Right, Jill. Oh my God. Okay. So anyway, to that, I thought that I would just kind of lay it out with you and show you where people like me are headed on the topic of like sort of my definition of working meta design, which is designing the framework with which to design, blah. So, and what I want to say to you guys is that in life, before you get to the starting line to design, you have to do so much work to have the opportunity to design. And that's really what my job is about. That's why I took this job, because I felt like I was handcuffed 90% of the time, sitting in a consultant seat. And so I shifted over to Ford Motors so that I would really have a better chance at thinking deeply into these bigger problems. And actually, Jill was with me when I made that decision. We were sitting on the board together doing the strategic plan, preliminary strategic planning. So, things like research-led design are really near and dear to us. We really believe in this, and you're going to see it in just a sec. When I share with you right now, the near complete stage of our post-COVID thinking for future of work for Ford Motor Company. So I'm going to share a screen and show to you a body of work that we've been focused on since May, where I hired HKS Advisory, which is a group of basically like healthcare thinkers, strategists, planners. They're used to working with C-suite of like major healthcare institutions, but also into like the realm of corporate interiors and other places to kind of help like construct framework, like big high level thinking. Also a woman named Dr. Rupali Nanda, Jill, I know you know her, but she's head of research for HKS. She's also the recipient of some of our grant funding through ASID. I really like Upali's research team. She brings with her a behavioral psychologist, an anthropologist, and others, the kind of ologists that I like to bring into a design equation first. And I'm going to also share with you what we're calling our new measuring stick for how we're validating future work at Ford now too, bringing those ologists. I'm sort of like bringing the smartest people that I know into, way smarter than me, by the way. That's how you do this. And you just like pay them some money, bring a lot of smart people, and then you start to like build up some really thoughtful reporting and I guess like methods of measuring. So you can move forward into what Upali calls big wicked problems. All right, so here we go. I'm going to grab a screen and show you how we got into this. Jill, is this okay with you? And you got to keep me on time here. How much
No,
time?
you're good. You're way
how much do
good.
you
We've
want to
got
talk
till
about?
like 4:30.
Okay. All right. And Rachel, Laura, Abdullah, is that how I say your name? Abdullah?
Yeah, it's Abdul Ilah, but it's okay.
Abdullah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Ariana and Hannah. So you guys all ask questions as we go through this. Like, it's okay, because that's how we do it in our think tank too. And when we have these discussions, it's very, very collaborative and everybody's kind of like adding in stuff. So you guys do that too. All right. Can you see me? Can you see
Mm,
screen? Great. Can you see something that says a framework for global resiliency?
mhm.
Great. All right. The intention of this is our audience, know your audience, is CEO of Ford Motor Company, so Jim Farley. We, in the middle of writing this, had a CEO change. Whoops. So we used to have Jim Hackett as our CEO, who was previously the CEO of Steelcase and from the design world. So this is kind of significant because our vocabulary, the way that we were constructing this was for kind of a fellow designer. Not anymore. Our new audience is very Wall Street focused. So in terms of productivity metrics like KPIs and how you kind of like you demonstrate success, total shift. So we're having a hard time now overcoming some nuances that are less tangible on the outside of this, like culture. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to take you through our executive summary, which is intended to be the Coles Notes version of this. We have some short, pithy quotes. That's very important when you do an executive summary. And I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to really land here. Can you see this whole page, or are you sitting on top of it?
Mhm.
All right. So guys, here's our method. This really outlines or constructs a framework, to think into a problem. So on March 16th, Ford Motor Company went home. We did not even have a chance to really mobilize ourselves. So other companies were going into a testing scenario where they were basically validating and testing their IT infrastructure. We didn't even have this. We literally sent 100,000 people home on a Friday. And then on Monday, hope to God it worked. We had invested in enough digital infrastructure that we felt pretty good about it. But on Monday, we basically deployed a mobile workforce. What happened in that time from, I guess that was March 19th onwards, was we radically shifted in culture from a place that was traditionally if I can't see you, you're not working, you're not productive, to that's like very old school thinking, to I would say within the month, I was getting phone calls of, do you think we need to have any physical assets any longer? Can we validate this? Because we believe productivity has never been so high. In that time, you have to pump the brakes and really ask, why is productivity so high? I mean, sure, people are working. We know, to this day, we know it. People are actually in what's called an allostatic state, which is the definition of burnout. They're working. We're no longer going to work. We're not at work. We're on work. Like, we're starting to define all this stuff. We're getting a new lexicon developed around this new place of work or this new realm of working. We're in a constant state of burnout. I'm sure you're experiencing this even in the way that you're working now online at school. There's no limits or boundaries around the way that we're working. So you turn on the computer and you're at work. Even though we've saved on things like there's no longer a commute for women, we don't have to put on makeup. That's kind of nice. We can see our family more. Like, there have been some benefits that have been noted amongst knowledge workers and executives, things like this. At the same time, though, there's no boundaries. So Whereas maybe you'd start work at 8:30 in the morning before, now you're starting at, in my world, 6. So it's like, it's just smearing across your scheduling, your calendar, and it kind of never ends. So we're calling this like panic work. So any metrics that are indicating productivity are in part motivated by the panic of losing one's job, potentially being laid off, having to demonstrate productivity metrics, knowing that you're being monitored on the basis of productivity. So there's a falsehood, associated with these metrics. We learned very quickly, incidentally, inside of our think tank from Tim Brown at IDEO. He's the previous CEO and founder of IDEO. Don't trust the metrics. So we kind of noted that immediately. Metrics are moot. Don't trust the metrics. Data is not something that you correlate. You got to look deeper inside of it and seek out the patterns. Because what was being shared across our organization were things like, we started gathering data immediately. 70% of our workers wish to stay at home. Henceforth, inside of that, 60% of those workers might consider a hybridized model, which is work, home, something in between. So we've got now we're hearing 70%, 60%, buy, sell. What do we do? Keep our buildings, sell our buildings, reduce our footprint. At the same time, we get a report from, this really did happen, from Gensler, who shared out their quote research. Their subject pool was far limited than ours. Ours was almost 100,000 workers. Theirs was under, I think theirs was 1,500 by comparison. So it's not even comparable. But they present it like research. They say 70% of their subject pool wishes to return to work. And then that's shared to our executive team. Oh my God, we're testing and receiving metrics which indicate 70% want to stay at home forever. Gensler, our strategic corporate planning partner and an expert in the field, is saying 70% want to get back to work. What's the real deal here? So when we say look deeper and seek out the patterns and ask for the kind of the contextual richness of the data, we're actually wanting to know things like, well, where do those people live? Are they in the suburbs? Are they in New York City? Are they in a 600 square foot apartment? Do they have roommates who drive them crazy? Do they have kids running around them? Are they homeschooling also? Do they need a place to focus? Or are they in a big house like me and it's kind of awesome? Do they look at nature all day long? So are they queued up for biophilic benefits? What is really happening in their lives? That is, driving the data. So the answer for us was create our own think tank, think for ourselves and get to the bottom of it. So we put together a group of thought leaders from other places, hence the ologists. So we had a lot of doctors, PhDs. We had an ecologist who brought to us thinking around macro and micro ecology, the benefits of staying close to nature and constructing the continuous landscape, exterior to interior landscape, the benefits of biophilia certainly, but more why you sort of bring that into mechanical systems and things like that too. We had I brought with us a doctor who'd been frontline COVID, a pediatric neurologist working in Detroit at Beaumont Hospital System, to kind of keep us truthful. And so when we're speaking of virus, he can kind of assure us that actually behavior of virus is this, not that, things like that. Of course, an anthropologist, that's Angela Raymer from HKS, to talk about culture, behavioral psychologist to talk about group behavior, and then, a lot of other people too. We had a very interesting interior architect named Dr. Sarah Goldhagen from New York City, who's written a book on, do you know her, Jill? She's fascinating.
Yeah, we are, everybody who's in theory class, which is almost everybody here on the line, is going to be reading her book next semester.
I'm so happy you are, because it's become such an important part of our insights. So absence of negatives, presence of positives. I can't say enough about how important this is. It's building on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it really takes it into the interior environment and brings context around why that's important.
Mhm.
So
It was a game
that's
changer
really
book for
important.
me.
Oh my God, I can see why.
I'm so excited about it.
She sat in our think tank and she was really important. She and, you know, what was interesting about that, guys? So she and Tim Brown bonded well. She sparred with the architects, like, you know, called their BS on a few topics, which was very interesting.
Hmm.
Okay, so that was our think tank. We had 3 workshops, starting with, you know, asking some big questions to kind of frame up the conversation. What we wanted to land on was our core value. What were our sort of principles or our core values emergent of a post-COVID state? We did get there. It took a lot of work. I'm going to share that with you now. Once we landed there, we moved into a design sprint. Before COVID, we were already designing our new world headquarters with Snøhetta. And we were in schematic design, which really, you know, begs the question, what do you do now? That's what precipitated this work, because you kind of got to pause on it and go, well, if you're designing now, what are the implications of, you know, COVID? Do you stay on the same course or do you pivot? And so think tank is inevitably going to pivot us, like duh, because nobody wants to work in the same way anymore. We have in our arsenal a series of what we're calling new non-negotiables, which like people are no longer going to tolerate or kind of, I guess, what would be the word? What's the opposite of tolerate? Not tolerate. There'll be, what is that? That we will have to absolutely petition for wellness. So whereas before we were like, yeah, biophilia, you got to have a view outside. There's got to be something around health. That's like a non-negotiable now. There will no longer be intolerance for or a lacking of wellness in our spaces. And you can put into that category like advocacy for infection control and you know, same for systemic resilience. Like, you know, if there's another pandemic, we don't know what that might be, but even ecological things like the next war, the great unknowns, you know, our ability to mobilize and get ourselves ready for that, and then either contain or, you know, shift our bodies inside of a building, you know, so that we can stay operational. So flex the building. That's really kind of our working definition of systemic resiliency. Flexibility, which is like tables on casters, that's a different thing. So these are our new non-negotiables, and we've got kind of a running list of that too. The thing is, once you scratch at this, the topic is so huge, it's like Pandora's box. Mm-hmm. Once you start displacing people and allowing them to work from home, we quickly learn that there's implications to do with the labor pool and labor relations. You've got to get the labor board involved. You've got to get lawyers involved. You've got to get human resources involved, like the contractual, the sort of logistical piece of the equation is like, it's immense. So our leading questions were, how do we assure long-term design resiliency for the health, safety, and wellness of employees? How do we harness the vast potential of Ford's human resources to support their creativity and innovation? In what ways is how work done changing, and what is required to support ongoing productivity? How can and should Ford's commitment to diversity and inclusion continue to be expressed and strengthened? Please bear in mind that in this time, we also had the explosion of Black Lives Matters, and these critical issues around social justice also come onto the table. Like if it wasn't complicated enough, now we're able to think more critically around social injustice and the fact that health, safety, and wellness is a psychological issue as much as it is a physical issue. So it gets even more complicated. And where we landed were these 9 guiding principles: systemic resiliency, which I mentioned, life as movement, empathy to action. Back to the future is basically like you don't sort of lose where you came from. It's easy to be a Ford employee. You're probably thinking, what the hell is that? I'll explain that to you in a second. Well-being is the pursuit of positives, duh. Phygital technology to delight, inspire. So phygital is an expression of the continuum, which means you can work at home, you can work in the workplace, and that continuum is not broken. The phygital is the total fusion of the physical and the digital space. I can work in my car, I can work anywhere, and I am enabled. Productivity is enabled. Work is not routine, so there's joy in the work that I do. And there's no stigma in remote work. There's major cultural implications wrapped up in all of this. So my confession to you is we kind of got to this point and we were giving ourselves like a pat on the back and the 3 cheers. And we ran right into the design sprint and started executing on what this, like how this stuff looks in space. We put it in front of some leadership to test it. And they're like, nah, I don't see it. I think we've done this stuff before and it works. How's this different? How's it changed? What we're learning is that there's a great divide in terms of how some see it and others, and some don't, and others see it. And it all has to do with culture. So I'll give you for example. Say Ford is historically, traditionally very hierarchical. Let's say you have a boss who's like senior to you, and he or she decides to go to work and says to the team, I prefer to be in the physical space. You're sort of further down the food chain. You're not comfortable being in the physical environment yet. You can easily be as productive at home because of this phygital enablement, but you feel pressured now to go into the physical space. So now you're emotionally or you're psychologically compromised. You feel like you'll be left out of the conversation, or you won't be as valued in the team structure because you haven't gone into work, essentially. So you're stigmatized. That cultural piece has broken the trust. It's also broken that phygital connectivity piece. The culture gets in the way. So all that work we've done to enable all this other stuff screws up immediately because culture gets in the way. Or another example is we design all these social spaces and we give you all this choice and flexibility at work. So there's joy, there's conversation, there's sharing of information, and we've constructed this new model of work. Hierarchy or old structure comes to play, and suddenly desks become more rigid, people stake domain, and we're back to old ways of working. Culture lays down the obstacle and it undoes it. Every time we kind of run the trap, the culture piece either undoes it or puts it back. And we're having a hard time getting past this one. So you can design.
Jen, are you saying that were you to provide, community spaces, places to, work that you had a lot of variety for, and you're saying that kind of ran into old traditions of, traditional workspace, or it even exacerbated them?
In that last example,
Mhm.
so like head count, like there's not enough people here. I need to densify the floor. And so, my definition of productivity is people in a desk. I don't define productivity by seeing people sitting in like sofas and seeing them at coffee tables working. That to me isn't like, that's not a densification strategy. I don't register that as people working.
I see.
If I'm going to see bums in seats, they've got to be sitting in desks for me to understand that that's a team structure. Blip, 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 desks and chairs creep back into the floor plan. And all of that social space where there's sort of like a duality of function, where people can be, well-being as a pursuit of positive. There's like the fusion of well space, work is not routine. I can posture differently. I can fitness, like all that stuff is sort of like fused together. It's gone.
Mm.
We're back to desks and chairs again. So yeah, problem.
Mm.
So it's like if you don't have buy-in at the highest level and you don't protect these ideas, these core principles or these big ideas, inevitably you will distill back to old habits. And it's gone. It washes away.
Jen, is there any, and I'm sure you've looked into this too, is there any way to provide, evidence of productivity that can mitigate some of those concerns?
Oh, funny you asked that.
Okay.
So we've worked very hard to construct a way of measuring or using evidence-based design to support design is a hypothesis. So evidence-based design supports the hypothesis. So for example, allostatic load, areas of respite recovery, in addition to stages for peak performance. That's what we're talking about here. And then you kind of move along and see in which of those principles it ticks the box. Mm-hmm. And you kind of do it for each of these evidence-based design categories. So this was a way of kind of like implementing a measuring stick. Pretty clever, I think, Polly and her team. And then there's like in an appendix, white papers to support each of these categories also.
So these marks on the chart indicate that that is some of the 9 at the top are how to fulfill the list on the left, or was this the responses from a survey or some such?
No, it's a way of, it's a method, I guess it's a method of fulfillment. So if this is an area of research, that's got, that has, white paper associated with it. So like a competent area of research, let's say, and these are our 9 distilled principles.
I see.
These ticks indicate that, this area of research, it resonates across these principles specifically. The colors are really about neurology, psychology, and anthropology. So as the colors loop together, it's really indicating the individual, the team, and the group. The group is culture. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 buckets of information merging on this page. And I just want to reiterate all of this before you've designed a goddamn thing. I mean, like, really. Yeah, I think that's the if I could leave you with something here today, it's all of this before you've designed anything. It's just for the privilege to be able to design anything. So it's just a lot of work. That was really the point I wanted to make. And the fact that we sort of live in nuances, we really are, when we talk about pushing the envelope or moving the needle and all of this stuff, we really live in this measured state of nuances. So if we can just sort of move a little bit, this is success for us. For example, look at this first one, flexibility as one-dimensional adaptation versus intentionally leveraging dynamic disruption for resilience. So most of our leaders would look at that and go, like, they're looking at this like, what does that even mean? Like, what is resilience? These nuances are so small, but they're so meaningful in terms of how it applies to design and what the outcome looks like. But this is the world that we live in. So it is our job to explain this well. It's very, very hard.
We've been actually talking about that today in terms of how can a design voice not only, make it clear what changes can help with progress, but how can we do it in a way that resonates from our own credibility?
Oh God, that's a very hard question. I think honestly, to answer, there's no easy answer to that question. I think that's what I'm spending all my time trying to do right now.
Mhm.
As I'm answering it, it's like it's not quite right. And then I pivot a little bit. And then I pivot again. And I'm just sort of trying to bring expertise with me to help. We talk, Jill, a lot about substantiating our design or substantiating our responses.
Mhm.
It's like constantly trying to shore up the response by substantiating it further.
Mhm.
And then when I talk about knowing your audience, it's also like tweaking your language so that it resonates, it hits with the audience. And so, when I say that our CEO changed midstream, I can't tell you how significant that is, because the KPI or the measure completely shifts now.
Mhm.
Now we have to start talking in terms of outcomes that are different. It's like dollars and productivity metrics, as opposed to like Jim Hackett doing the right thing for the right reason. That was the world he lived in.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what it costs. You got to do the right thing for the right reason. Oh my God, it's a new day.
Mm.
So
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
So where have you landed now? Obviously, this has been quite the journey with some bumps and hurdles along the way. What are your next steps or intentions?
So after we've done this, we get to another section of work that is, it's hiding under here. It is actually the design sprint. So I'm not going to go through all this. I just really want to kind of, show you the amount of work that goes into a project. This is a second document that folds in under it. It's sort of like chapter 2. The design sprint essentially starts to test out these ideas. So when I say to you, when I use kind of big nebulous terms like systemic resiliency, I've got to show you what that looks like. So we hired, after all of our doctors and ologists, a design team to apply that thinking to a running project, the world headquarters, the hub. And then we start to re-examine our original pass at workplace planning and what might it look like using these new insights. So this is what we're doing now. We've constructed new vignettes, kind of like a new system of components, and then take a run at a typical plan. When I say typical plan, this project is the size of a city. It's 2 million square feet, 6,700 people day one. It's huge. So we had to identify 3 kind of big themes, because designers like narratives. So these are them. And they needed to extract directly from the think phase so that there's a relationship. And that's what we're working into now. We're completing this phase of work.
So this is all before the shovel is even broken ground, right?
Yeah, in fact, we are in, are you guys comfortable with the phases of work of design at this point? If I see you schematic design to design development? Okay. So we're very far along, actually. We're in we've just started DD. So SD is complete, which means there's time cost implications to any pivoting that we do at this point. This is a big deal. So if we do shift on new workplace planning or standards, there's some big implications, and we have to know what that is. So we're a little bit out of sequence on this, ideally, but COVID didn't really ask our permission, did it? So it is what it is. So do you guys want to talk about any of this and kind of how this works in real life and who yells at who and?
Well, I just wanted to ask you about the work environment because I worked before in a flexible schedule work environment where I had to spend like only 6 hours a day in the office, but it didn't matter when I can spend the 6 hours. So have you considered doing that? I mean, I know Ford is a huge company, and in design it's so different. So were you able to do that?
Yeah, we've talked about it. So, when you talk about the culture of a place like Ford Motor Company, there's a couple of things to understand. One, it's a engineering and production company first and foremost. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge work that goes, that exists there, but so the culture is punch in, punch out. So they're really historically used to that kind of like system. However, they also understand now that the outcome should be more about like contributions from a knowledge work case and less about like hours worked, because the world is moving in this direction. And so we are talking a lot about that now. And like, I can't tell you the radical shift that's happened in the last 6 months. It really was, even in the time I joined, it was so old school. And now it's really gone to these conversations. It's like blown my mind. That said, it's going to take a lot to get this company to get to a, no vacation time, work when you want to work, get your work done, wear your big boy or girl pants. They're not there yet. But
Have you found that this time of such extreme change has actually loosened up some people's thinking, that it's more like, well, this is already messed up anyway, let's try X? Or is it, yeah.
Yeah. And like where you live, you don't have to live even in the same state to be part of the team. I'm noticing that, like our new CEO has houses in Los Angeles and London. And, some of our leaders they live in Chicago and God knows where. So you're sort of like figuring it out as you're talking to them, which really bugs me because I could have stayed in Dallas and done this. Not sold my house. But yeah, I think there'll be some big changes. You know what else is interesting that I learned through Think Tank? Do you know that the Motor Company invented the 5-day work week? You know that it was Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company for the labor unions. It happened it was 100 years ago.
Wow.
We realized that while we were talking blue sky about, well, couldn't we just reinvent the work week? Like get rid of a 5-day work week? Would solve a lot of problems.
Jen, in the midst of all of this, I can't help but ask, how do you see the future of design in terms of engaging with such sticky, wicked problems like this? Are you encouraged with, people paying more attention to design now because of what we've experienced, for example?
Yeah. I noticed immediately that a lot of the questions were put to the designers immediately, like help us out of this. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, Jill, that the better thinking is to this day coming from the CBREs. Like when I look to the work that's being put out, well, actually, I won't say that full stop. Like there was quite a variance from the paperwork that was put out from like your big firms that just put out stuff more as marketing material, your Genslers and whatever, to pick on them again. I was impressed by HKS's work, of course, because they're very research focused. But man, CBRE, like they crushed it because they infused like business framework, business acumen with design thinking, with like people strategy. They brought it all together. And these problems are not just about design. Mm-hmm. And we've been talking about that, for years at ASID, that design students need business training. They need all of these other pieces too, and it's fundamentally lacking.
Mhm,
This moment is proving that out.
mhm.
I'm even struggling with it. I'm having a very hard time keeping up to all of the other pieces.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that pretty much captures the struggle we've been having just talking about issues about you can't just, understand a floor plan. You have to understand the deep
yeah,
context of the
yeah.
forces that are enacting on that floor plan, et cetera. That it's way beyond just simple square foot. It's not even that same realm anymore.
We said this before, but I believe it now. This is the future of design. And we talked in our think tank about the power of coalition building. It started with Tim Brown, and then we all kind of like unpacked this fully, which was that it's different than collaborating or team building. Coalition building is working with external agencies and people that you're just not used to teaming with because
Mhm,
of expertise that you just don't have. This
mhm,
is a great example of that. I am not a finance person, so I've got to bring finance guys and girls with me now. It's critical to understanding how this works. I need labor relations. I need lawyers. Like to do design work.
mhm.
So this will be our future now.
This has gotten bigger than any of us, hasn't it?
100%. Yeah. And I think every problem will be this complicated and big now.
Mm.
So your meta design class is like critical. It's teaching students how to kind of like get into the problem and be comfortable in that space.
Mhm. Yeah, we just talked earlier today, about 15 minutes ago, that this project is designed to push and to nudge beyond the floor plan, to encounter a problem and to, meet that problem with skills you may not be entirely comfortable with.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really great, guys. Pay attention to this class. It's very important.
Any advice for us?
Well, there's some. And Koi Vo and I have been talking, he's at SCAD. We talk a lot about starting about precipitating curriculum around business thinking and partnering with others, just to make sure his students have that kind of training. I mean, I think if you guys have the opportunity and you can take classes in other departments at your university, this would be amazing.
Mhm,
Some of the most important people on our projects anyway are consistently the anthropologists
mhm,
and the behavioral psychologists. I mean, if I could go back to school right now, it would be in some adaptation of neurology so I could apply it to my work.
mm.
That would be like my dream state. I wish that they had taught that in design school.
Mm.
Because I think when I look back now, design is just so superficial, the way that it's taught. And when design, I'm with consultants all day long from all over the place, and they present work to me, and I can see superficial design versus design that's really like thoughtfully constructed.
Mhm,
I can see it immediately now. So
mhm.
yeah, that would be some advice I'd give to you. So you can speak the language of substantiated design. That's a powerful tool.
That is a wonderful term.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Students, other questions? This is a rare opportunity to talk to somebody who's absolutely in the thick of it.
Are you guys graduating this year? How many more years have you?
I think we're all in our first year of the 2-year program, and then Abdulila graduates in 1 year, I think.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 1 year, but I'll spend 1.5 years to expand it a bit.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
We have some really interesting projects brewing here. Could you guys quickly tell Jen what you're thinking about? And I bet you'd have some opinions on them. Yes.
Well, for me, I'm doing focusing on early elementary education, how the pedagogical style of the teacher and the learning styles of students both impact the classroom design. I'm looking at different like teaching technologies, interactive classrooms, outdoor environments, that can be influenced into the classroom, and then also looking at how the pandemic has affected learning and what we can do to, change the classroom, since a lot of it's gone virtual, and the technology that's infused with that as well. So
Oh my God, that's so important. You know what's interesting?
yeah.
So I had a phone call with Jim Hackett, our previous CEO, last week. And we were talking about the fact that workplace of the future is probably more akin to an academic institution.
Hmm.
It's more about
Wow.
different pedagogical styles of teaching and learning
Mhm.
because it's an exchange of information. And
Yeah.
it's about workplace. Like if I were to just throw out some really stupid thesis, it would be workplace is gone. And now we're into a new exchange of information. And it's really about what you've just described. It's like a new
Yeah.
model of academic learning. And we should
Right.
call it that. We should name it that way. You should, hey, there you go. There's your in, man.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. You said Jim Hackett was talking about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he wants me to get on some task force to kind of like dig into this.
Oh, wow.
Do a great thesis and give it to me.
Okay. I'll send it over to you when it's done.
Hannah, how about you?
So I'm really inspired by like spacecrafts and the design of them. So I'm really focusing on the interiors of the spacecrafts and their design and how it affects the psychological like aspects and how it can promote mental health for astronauts. And eventually, I hope one day to be on the design team to design the interior of the spacecraft that goes to Mars.
So you need to do your internship with Virgin Galactica, yeah?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of them. I'm like in the process of like applying for internship with NASA, but I will look into them too.
You should. That's a real gig. So, I do a lot of work with a company called Farm Boy Fine Arts, and they're our art consultant. They're doing our environmental graphic design and art strategic plan globally, and they hold the contract for actually for that, cruise ships, hotels, all of it. So they just got the briefing on the galactic part of the business. That's for real. You should really try and get an intern.
Wow. Okay. Thank
I'm
you.
like, you're getting briefing on their rocket ships? And he said, yeah, I gotta go. I have to. That would be a kick-ass internship, seriously.
It would. That would be awesome.
Okay. And then of course there's Tesla. I mean, like, duh. And then NASA. Yeah, great targets. Good for you.
Thank you.
And then, when Ford expands mobility into space travel, we can talk there too.
Laura, how about you?
So I'm looking at improving the wellness and quality of life for nursing home patients, more so as like their sense of self and how they perceive themselves in the space.
Jill, you got to translate that. I could hardly hear it.
Oh,
Yeah, Laura, if I get this right, she's interested in the quality of life for seniors who are transitioning from aging in place to nursing home environments.
Oh my God. Well, there's the majority of the population. So that's brilliant. Excellent. Well, Jay Miller's your contact. So Jill, that's
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I just linked them up yesterday.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Really, BJ is so smart. And she's such an entrepreneur on top of it. So she's a great mentor and inspiration. Really, she's a very bright woman. Okay, excellent.
Abdulila is from Saudi Arabia. What you got, Abdulila?
Marhaba.
Yeah. Oh, hello, marhaba. Hello.
Khalek, nice to meet you.
Okay, so you know some words. So I guess
I do.
assume
My
you
daughter
work.
was born in Abu Dhabi.
Okay, that's great. So I hope, well, Saudi, it's kind of different than Abu Dhabi, but
Yeah,
we
it's
have
very
many,
different. But we were neighbors for a hot minute, weren't we?
yeah.
Very
So
hot
that's why,
minute.
definitely. So I wanted to tackle, affordable housing problem, but only for a specific demography. And that's one of the things also I want to tackle, the harsh environment, of course. And because in Saudi, we don't have a lot of housing project, not housing project, but student housing or small housing apartments or loft or studios. So, usually young professionals and fresh graduates and temporary employees have to rent a full 2-bedroom apartment. And in Saudi, we never had like studio apartments or 1-bedroom apartments. So I want to tackle that demographic exactly. And, even college students and fresh graduates and young professionals, they would want affordable housing building that will serve them, while also trying to tackle, different aspects such as affordability and sustainability and socializing as well, because I want them to socialize more, because some of them are temporary employees, and some of them just came to like this city to work for a specific time. So it's affordable housing project with prioritizing single demography, specific demography.
So are you trying to provide an opportunity to integrate society a little bit more because it's such a class-based or a caste society?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's a big problem. That's good for you. Is this a hypothetical, or do you have a site and city in mind? Are you next to one of the university cities?
Well, most of my information are based on my personal experience, because I graduated in 2018, so from back in Saudi. So a lot of my friends had the same problem, and it's kind of hard to implement in different cities. So that's why I wanted to implement it in one city that's kind of the how Arabian culture, they're more conservative. So I wanted just to implement that idea in the most liberal city, because it would accept this type of projects. So,
It's very interesting. You guys have some very interesting projects.
Yeah, they're on the trail of some big conundrums for sure.
Yeah, they're hard. They're hard projects.
Yeah. Well, Jen, I know that we've taken up a lot of your time here. We can't thank you enough for this. Any parting words for us?
I mean, I'm really happy to see that you've tackled some big projects. I know that you don't have the resources necessarily to bring in others to help you solve through them, but maybe if there's a way that you could imagine, sort of like the kind of team that you would imagine creating a coalition with, that would be really useful. Like, to Abdullah, like, who would you bring in to help you think through this? You'd probably have ethnographers and certainly the anthropologists that I dream about with each project, but there would be imagine the kinds of experts that you would team with, so that in future you sort of have this construct in mind. I think that would be really useful for you, maybe as an ad. I don't know, Jill, I'm sure you have all of this structured brilliantly, but in our think tank, I think this power of coalition building, it bubbled to the top every time. It seemed like it was really important.
Yeah, Jen, what you're talking about is specifically a part of the step called the business case, where you have to identify your allies and those subject matter experts that you need to bring in that fills in the gaps of your own information. So absolutely true.
And they're not the usual suspects anymore. They're different kinds of community members and others. They're new others that we had.
We've been talking about the need for perhaps ethicists on future design teams as well, philosophers and so forth.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Jen. This has been super informative, and it's a pleasure to speak with you and to just see the amazing things that you and your team are doing.
Thanks, Jill. It is so nice to see you.
You too. I hope things go well with all of this change.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see. You'll see.
All right. Take care, Jen.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.